Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to thank you, Alexander. Congratulations on this. This has become the place to be for all of us in the computer industry. For those of you who have worked so hard to build the networks and the things that we care about, it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to say that mobile computing and mobile data networks have really arrived around the world. This is a place in Barcelona where the phones work even in the elevators, where every single plug in the wall has a mobile charger in it, and we're proud to be part of that tribe. When I think about this, I think about the fact that you have a whole terminal devoted to the app planet. You have literally that level of commitment to this new platform that's being built. Many of you already know that the scale of smartphones growing more than 30% year over year, and in 3 years, if not sooner, smartphones will pass global PC sales. This is a remarkable achievement by everybody here in the room. You may not know, or you may also suspect, that mobile web adoption is proceeding at 8 times faster than the equivalent point 10 years ago for the desktop. That's how much faster this is happening because of everything that we have done. Half the new internet connections are from mobile devices. That's probably not so surprising. But from a Google perspective, there are more Google searches on mobile than on desktop in emerging countries like Indonesia and South Africa. Pretty exciting. Maybe the best testament to what we all have done is the way in which we've affected ordinary people's lives, and there is no better test of that than somebody in trouble. A famous story from a few weeks ago that somebody used an iPhone application to diagnose his wounds sitting in the rubble in Haiti, or a teenage girl who updated her Facebook status sitting in the rubble to send rescuers to come rescue her. It must make you proud to have built something so fundamental to human existence. If you work in those companies or you're part of this ecosystem that made all that possible. So I take this audience as understanding this as given. I take us as all part of the same view that information is so fundamental. I take our joint view that mobile is it, and that's what I want to talk about. So to me, the question is, what's next? Right? We've had a good ride, right? It's working. What's next? I suggest that there are 3 historical components for what we're seeing. Now, the first is computing. And it's interesting that the Nexus 1, which everybody here knows about, is got a gigahertz processor. 25 years ago, when I was at Sun, we sold 1,000 Sun workstations, roughly the equivalent of computer this, at tens of millions of dollars for 6 months of work to get a computer company actually using them. I sit there now and say, why didn't I just wait 25 years and I'd have it in the palm of my hand? And imagine 25 years from now, at the rate at which Moore's Law is working, what people will be saying about what we're doing today versus what we do 25 years from now. The low-power, high-performance chips that are on the burner, that everyone here is either working on or will be using in the next few years, have all of the wonderful properties that we've seen in the traditional personal computer industry. And the rate of innovation is not slowing down. The multi-core revolution and so forth is really taking off. The second tremendous wave is one about connectivity. The internet now connects 700 million public servers, roughly. We don't really know. It's hard to know how big the internet is, but we know it's humongous. I was looking for interesting applications. Perhaps the most interesting one is the US Embassy in Beijing uses Twitter to update the status of the air every hour, and literally does a tweet so everybody can see what they think is important. This notion of publishing and microblogging and so forth, information that you think is generally interesting, is an explosion that will drive networks further into everything we use in every way. Think of it as an opportunity to instrument the world, that these networks are now so pervasive, we can literally know everything if we want to. What people are doing, what people care about, information that's monitored. We can literally know it if we want to, and if people want us to know it. Now, you sit there and you go, well, what are the limits to this connectivity? The second phase that I was talking about. Well, maybe we'll run out of IP addresses. Well, the number of IPv6 addresses is 2 to the 128th plus or minus. For those of you who know, 2 to the 128th is a lot bigger than a number like 2 to the 64th. And in fact, there's so many that the estimates of roughly the number of electrons, protons, and so forth in the Earth are roughly in those orders of magnitude. So my point here is we're not going to run out of devices that we can address if we can imagine what we want to do with them. The important thing here is that in conjunction with that, the work that people here are doing around bandwidth is also getting significantly more powerful. Here, as you walk around the show, as I've done today and as all of you have, the story is LTE and the technologies that underlie LTE. And I was shocked to discover that the United States might actually deploy LTE soon. Right? Historically, if you live in the United States, you're always behind. You're always behind the Europeans with respect to mobile networks. But maybe this time the US and Europe can actually rise at the same rate. Asia, of course, catching up very, very quickly. And with LTE, the game changes again. Now, all of a sudden, the rather ubiquitous 1 megabit data connection that we all take for granted in modern wireless networks, maybe we'll get to 5 or 10 on a commonplace and measured way with peak performances much higher than that. This has a lot of implications for the kinds of applications that people are going to develop, and I'm going to talk about that. So if you take a look, the faster download speeds, the faster upload speeds, people take it for granted. You forgot when you didn't have a megabit or 10 megabits, but I remember. Think back to 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you were striving so hard for that level of performance that you could do. And now, of course, we have a whole generation of young people who have no notion of history, which I guess was true of my generation when we were young as well. They don't call it a mobile phone, they just call it a phone. That's a win. That's a victory for everyone here. Now, the third and final wave of computing that has come together is around cloud computing. And you've heard a lot about cloud computing. The simplest way to think about cloud computing is the information doesn't have to be stored in the SIM anymore, right? That the SIM card, which never had that much capacity anyway, can now be used as an identifier to keep very, very sophisticated amounts of data in the cloud. So literally when a person loses their phone or misplaces something or wants it, they can literally get exactly the same way. People always say, well, I want a copy from here to there. That's the wrong terminology. The right terminology is to replicate, right? That I have as many different client devices and I can have multiple copies of everything. And one of the key insights about applications, and this new generation of applications, and it really is an application story, as highlighted by your whole apps hall here, these applications are sharing intensive. That the generation of applications developers that built before cloud computing was popular thought in terms of local copies and so forth, whereas with applications now in the cloud, it's all about sharing and replication. And by doing that, you can build very, very powerful interlinked systems, things that are simple like calendar systems or very complex monitoring systems that everybody cares a lot about. So all of the companies that are now leading the sort of cloud computing revolution, think of Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Salesforce, Spotify, and so forth, are all demonstrating the sort of principle of cloud computing. And cloud computing is more than here to stay. It becomes the basis for the back end of everything that everybody here in this room does. Now, over time, if you go back, and I've been in this industry long enough to know this, over, say, 30 or 40 years, each of these waves, the computing wave, the telecommunications wave, and the need for servers, which is what cloud computing is today, they intersect at a particular point. For many years, it was in the mainframe context. More recently, it's been in a personal computer context. And I'm pleased to say now that it's in the context of these powerful phones. It is the phone that is the meeting point. And let me say it in a stronger way. Let me suggest that if you don't get the three waves right, you won't win in this new space. A device that's not connected is not interesting. It's literally lonely, right? There's nothing to do with it. What's the first thing you do when you get a new device? You see if you can connect it into the internet, right? You do that without even thinking these days. An application that does not leverage the power of the cloud is not going to wow anybody. It's going to be too narrowly defined. And a super fast network that's slow, that's paired with a slow and heavy device won't succeed either. So you see the interdependency is now abruptly obvious for all of us who participate in this amazing ecosystem that's around us. Why the mobile phone? Because it's the high volume endpoint. I mean, it's not because we're nice people or something, although I hope we are. It's actually because there's a point of volume and growth and so forth. And when these points occur in an industry, they become the defining or iconic products in that space. And that time is upon us right now, right here, for this year and for at least the next many years. It's like magic. All of a sudden, there are things that you can do that had never even occurred to you that are possible because of this convergence point. There's an implication of this which I think has not been expressed here or in the industry as a whole, and it has to do with what I'm going to call mobile first. It's a principle of mobile first. And I see it at Google because now our programmers are doing work on mobile first. And that is, in fact, a change. In every product announcement we've done recently, and I just sort of noticed it. Of course, we'll have a desktop version, a high-quality web browser version. We love those things, and our customers love them as well. But we'll also have one on a high-performance mobile phone on all the browsers that are available, all of which are coming together, which is the good news. And those are better applications. And now the top programmers want to work on those applications. Why? Because there's something on those phones that they can't get on a desktop. It's more specific, it's more human, it's more location aware, it's more interactive, it's more dynamic, it's more personal, it's more satisfying to them. Now, there are lots of examples of this. Let me give you a voice input example. You know, speech recognition is really a data problem, and all of the first versions of this were done with speech recognitions that would run in the phone. Well, the problem is you don't have that much processing power, although you certainly have a lot. And you don't have that much memory, although you have a lot. But you have a lot more in the cloud. So the new ones, the ones that actually work, use these large sets of databases that are sitting on servers. And they talk to each other, and the networks are fast enough that you can get an answer very quickly. All of a sudden, voice recognition, which never really worked before, now works really, really remarkably well. So you send the voice files into the cloud, and they're processed, in our case, by hundreds of thousands of computers in parallel to look at intersections and so forth and come up with they essentially vote to come up with the better answer, and they give it to you. It's remarkably accurate. So you sit there and you go, now what could I do with this? Well, I've got voice recognition. I've got Google Translation, so I can translate from 100 languages into 100 languages. So why can't I just talk on the phone to somebody who doesn't speak my language? Well, we're not quite there, but it's coming. And it's coming because of the unique intersection of computing and communications and cloud-based data storage, and the development of algorithms that were only ideas on whiteboards over the last few years. There's an interesting application that I found that will run, it actually tries to diagnose your cough by listening to you on your phone. Now, this is very useful. You know, are you dying or are you okay? You know, very, very important. Another example, cameras. So here I am, and I've not been to Barcelona before, and there's a beautiful building literally right outside this hall. So Vic and I are walking around, and we take a picture of the building, and using Google goggles, it says it's the Arts Museum. Furthermore, it tells us what's in the Art Museum, and is it open, and when can I go see it while I'm here in town. That's a good example of how something which seems fairly simple, just using my camera, all of a sudden becomes something incredibly interesting to me. So here when I walk around, and I walk around the town, my phone, since it knows who I am, and it knows where I am, and it knows where I'm physically walking, why doesn't it give me a history of all the things going on and the extraordinary creativity of Gaudi and so forth and so on? It's all right in my pocket, literally, in my hand. Now, the ability to do this is not limited to simple examples like the where am I, but there are some other implications of this which are sort of interesting and maybe a little worrisome. We'll see. Since the phones all know where they are, and people tend to follow in the same pattern, you could imagine applications which not only know where I am, but predict where I'm going. most people pretty much stay in the, and again, that application might make sense as long as people get the choice to turn it on or off, right? Or lie about where they are or whatever they want to do. But the important point here is when you have all that data, you can begin to use the computational characteristics that modern computer science offers to do some really phenomenal things. One of the people who invented this area for us is a fellow named Hartmut Neven, who's the person who's essentially brought you all of the face recognition and other services. And I'd like Hartmut to join us. Maybe you can show us a couple of the things that you are about to announce. Hartmut?
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and buenas tardes. So yeah, in light of Eric's remarks, I want to show you two new ways how you can search Google. And both nicely illustrate this point, what can happen if you have a sensor-rich device connected to computing in the cloud. So one is search by voice, and the other is search by image. So about a year ago, we introduced voice search in English. Let me show this to you first. So here you see the little microphone button, or it should maybe be the voice search icon. Spanish restaurants in Los Angeles. Okay, hello. Okay, so here you have basically the results that you get when you would have done a text search. Here's a guide to Spanish restaurants and a few good choices.
Everybody here is so used to this, no one sort of like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's disappointing. Okay.
How do you need to tell me how you do this, by the way.
Yeah, actually, since you asked, basically what is happening in here is we record the audio, then stream it in real time to our data centers. And there's the audio recognition engines come in, extract audio features from my utterances, and then map those onto words and phrases. And then we come up with a set of likely phrases. And then earlier, as you explained, Eric, a key point here is this list of likely phrases gets compared to the most popular queries we saw over the last few days. And this matching against popular queries, this explains some of the quality we are seeing here with this application. I mean, you may have noticed this was not even phased by my fairly strong accent. So we introduced English about a year ago, and since then we have covered Mandarin and Japanese language. And tonight, for the first time, I'm going to show you a fourth language, German. You might have guessed that. So again, same process, maybe something simple first. Bilder von Berlin. So I apologize, normally it's much snappier, but I think we are all competing here for bandwidth. But here you see some nice iconic images from Berlin. But how about something a little bit more involved? Let's say you want to know about the hip nightclub in Berlin. Techno Club, Berghain Panorama Bar in Berlin. You know that place? Okay, so recommend it. So here's the map, and you can, it has even a Wikipedia page. So I still, even though I work in the field, I have to say I'm still astonished how well this works. Sometimes I'm driving with my little boy in the car, and then I hear him playing with voice search, and he gives it the oddest phrases, and the hit rate is just astonishing. So this was search by voice, and now we switch to search by image. Many of you may have seen that in December, 2 months ago, we released Google Goggles, which is mobile visual search. And essentially the idea there is you come by an object that interests you, interesting landmark, a book, a product, a wine bottle, or just a barcode. Then in order to get more information about this product, you would take out your phone, take a picture of it, and this serves as a query to trigger search results for you. So maybe I can demonstrate this here with a landmark. So I come by this beautiful place in Barcelona, and then I snap a picture of it. And so fast, I couldn't even get back in time to show you the nice animation in between. So we found Sagrada Familia. And I can learn it started to be built 1882. It's pretty early given the state it's in, but it's a beautiful place. So yeah, I'm not done just yet. One advantage, of course, of working in the cloud is that you can mix and match. So we don't only have significant investments into image recognition or voice recognition, but we also have a very strong translation group. And today, for the first time, again, it's a preview, like the German voice search. I want to preview with you optical character recognition paired with real-time translation. So I have, you can see this here, German language menu. And I would assume that many of you here would maybe not be able to know what to eat tonight. But if you have the new goggles translation, what you can do, you zoom in, take a picture. I should show this to you. Yeah, place it there. So the speech. Thank you. So thank you. So in German language, this says Frühlingssalate mit Wildkräutern und Parmesan im Speckmantel, which in English translates to a spring salad with wild herbs and Parmesan cheese wrapped in bacon. So I would think that is tasty, and I'm hopeful that our users will be delighted by this quite helpful feature. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Hartmut. And for me, what Hartmut does really is magic. And I think it shows you a little bit of what will be coming over the next few years. If you go back to my thesis of the 3 intersection points, we decided to move the ball forward at Google by releasing a set of products generally known as Android, which many of you are very, very familiar with. And we wanted to do this partly to build a platform ecosystem, which I think is working very well, but also to serve as a catalyst to bring a new model of how people would consume information. And I would tell you that it's working remarkably well. I sort of counted up how well we're doing. We have more than 65 partners. We have 26 devices with 59 operators in 48 countries and 19 languages so far. And I would say we're just at the beginning. To give you a sense, we're now shipping more than 60,000 Android devices in the Android industry per day, and that number has doubled over the last quarter. Obviously, the growth rate is accelerating, and we hope that the growth rate, as well as the demand, will continue for a very long time. Because of the partner announcements that are happening this week, there's a lot of reasons to think that the Open Handset Alliance that we've done with Android has really, really worked very well. Now, what I thought I would do is give you a couple of demos and have literally the best student I ever had at Stanford, Eric Seng, join us. Where is he? If you want to come on out and do your demo. Here he is, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. I didn't know you were going to mention the Stanford bit. Now I feel like I'm in a lecture again all over, and I'm about to get cold called. I already have been cold called, haven't I? So thank you all, and thank you, Eric. You know, when we think about Android, we get really excited because Android really is about that merger of those 3 themes that Eric has been talking about. You're talking about computing, connectivity, and the cloud. And when you put that all together, you're really looking at what is nothing short of a revolution. The line is blurring between mobile phones and desktop computing. And what I wanted to do is show you 2 demos on Android that really illustrate that blurring of lines, starting with something which has always been kind of missing from the desktop browsing experience. Now, one of our main goals when we embarked on smartphones at Google was to really mirror the desktop web browsing experience right there on your phone, right there in your pocket. But for many of you out there, and you know who you are, there's been a critical component that's been missing: Flash. So what I want to give you a sneak preview of today is Flash running on Android. And here you see an image that many of you are probably familiar with, the New York Times. But as you scroll around, you can see that all the components are there, including the videos. And I'm just going to zoom in here, take a look at this video of a logger, and why don't we just start playing that video. So one tap, this is actually just now buffering. Everyone here, get off Wi-Fi.
That's right.
Well, as this is buffering, the beauty of this is that you can actually page around, and this video would actually be playing in the context of the overall web page. Let's take you to another video, which will actually hopefully run, and we may be able to come back there later. But here's one that I think will appeal to a lot of you, which is movie trailers. And let's launch one here, which is the Book of Eli. And the beauty of what we were able to do by working really closely with Adobe is tie the Flash runtime directly into the native capabilities of these smartphones, these really high-end smartphones. So the wondrous thing about these high-end devices now is that they come with very high-end advanced graphics processing. And the Flash 10.1 that's now running on Android, this is not Flash Lite, this is the full Flash 10.1. Is leveraging the hardware acceleration capabilities that are native on the device. So here you have a movie trailer. Let me pull this here.
30 winters ago, the war tore a hole in the sky. Only a few survived.
All right,
Our only hope is
let's
in
put that to a stop. That was getting a little creepy. But the last demo I wanted to show is probably one that most of you will spend most of your time using when we talk about Flash, and that's gaming. So here we have a site called MiniClip. And MiniClip is a compilation of a lot of different games that you'll probably enjoy here on your phone. I'll pick one here called Alien Attack. And you've got 3 minutes to spare at the bus stop. Let's put this into full screen. Double tap to fill it to the full screen here, and let's start saving the world by shooting down some aliens. That's a friendly. I learned that. And here we go. No friendly fire. Friendly fire. So as you can see, Flash is running now. What really gets me excited about Flash, though, is the fact that it's not just completing the picture about desktop browsing, but it's also extending the reach of all those Flash developers out there and giving access to all of you to the wondrous catalog of content that's working on Flash. But the other piece about cloud computing and sort of tying this all to mobile that gets me really, truly excited is how we can miniaturize the world. When we make these devices, smartphones, connected to the cloud, then anything really is possible. Now, a lot of you have probably played with an app called Google Earth. And you've probably played with it on your PC computer. But what is so amazing about Earth is its ability as well to educate and to inform. And I'll give you an example. Let's fly into Haiti. Now, Eric, in his earlier talk, talked a little bit about the examples of how smartphones have played a critical role in Haiti. In fact, I think it's almost $20 million have been raised just through SMSs alone for the Haiti cause. But one thing that I did as soon as the Haiti earthquake arose was I launched this app and I showed it to my friends because they didn't see what had happened. And what happened was just 2 days after the earthquake hit Haiti, Google acquired updated satellite imagery of Haiti that showed what had happened. And what I'm going to do here is zoom in to Haiti, and I'm going to pick this location here. This is the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And you can see that the roof of the building has completely caved in. And if I pan just directly across the lawn, there are some refugee camps that were formed temporarily because of the earthquake. Just an amazing illustration of what you can do just in your pocket and inform and educate and learn. And of course, if we layer on top some of that great voice recognition software that Hartmut just demonstrated, Mount Fuji. What you find is that you can have all those great capabilities that you had and enjoyed on the desktop computer, but now here on your phone. And I'm going to fly to Mount Fuji. It recognized what I said. It's doing all the animation really, really fast that you expect to see on a desktop computer. And just to prove that we did indeed find Mount Fuji, I'm going to get that bird's eye 3D view of the mountain right here on my phone. So there you have it. I think there's just two examples of what really is possible with smart end phones running on a platform like Android. And with that, back to you.
Thank you very much. So what's the basic message here? I think it's pretty simple. The confluence of these three factors means something very fundamental is happening. The phone is no longer a phone, it's your alter ego. The phone is no longer a place something that you just use, and it's fundamental to everything that you do. It's an extension of everything that we are. It doesn't think as well as we do, but it has a better memory. It has a more accurate notion of where we are. It can take pictures better than we can remember things, and on and on and on. That this power that's been invented by the confluence of these things really does give us an opportunity to make this be the time for us, the time now. Now is the time for all of us to get behind this. So what I would suggest here right now at the Mobile World Congress, we understand that the new rule is mobile first. Mobile first in everything. Mobile first in terms of applications. Mobile first in terms of the way people use things. And it means some important things. It means that we have a role now to inform, to educate through all these devices. And by the way, to waste everybody's time too with games and so forth and so on, which is fine. The important point is it's what people want. It's time for us to make mobile first be the right answer. Here we are, mobile first, surrounded by the awesome power of the networks that you all have built, the scale and computational power of the data servers that Google and others have behind them that can do things that no single person could ever do. The job here is to create magic by putting all that together in ways where people just go, oh my God, how did I ever live without that before? That's what we do. It's mobile first because it's time for us to have the software and the networks work together so that they don't, for example, waste time signaling, that they use the bandwidth that is being provisioned, which is fundamentally a scarce resource, correctly. It's mobile first in the sense that we need to figure out a right way to handle the 1% of people who use 70% of the bandwidth, right? Without inconveniencing the other 99%, but providing a good service for 100% of all the users. It's mobile first in the sense that we want to say yes and not no. Culturally, it's time to figure out a way to say yes to the emergent new services and ideas that will not come from Google or from companies represented here in the room, but by the literally millions of companies and programming shops that will be built on the new platforms, such as Android and all of the other ones. They're all coming, and they're coming right now. And I think that perhaps the phrase should be mobile first simply because it's our time to be proud of what we have built together. I'm enormously proud to be part of this. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to say that I think it's now the joint project of all of us to make mobile be the answer to pretty much everything. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much. And right now, we'll open the floor for questions. And before we say that, it's actually great to know that it's not only you impacting us, that we impacted you as well. And mobile first becomes really important part of Google development. And so now, please prepare your questions.
Hello again, Eric.
Yes, hi there. Nice to see you.
Reza, yes, our good
hi,
friendship from the EDS days, and the things that you and I firmly believed in was the partnerships and alliances. Yeah. This was something that you and I were doing many, many years ago. You said cloud, connectivity, and content. That's the 3 C's. There's also 3 P's. People, partnership, and performance. With thousands of developers, with all the partnerships that you've developed, and congratulations, by the way, again, you did the magic tonight without the magic wand, by the way. But I'd like to know, where do you see the partnership between the mobile industry and Google moving forward for the same goal and the same purpose we have?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of comments. I think first, ultimately these businesses, all of us, will succeed to the degree that we stay end user focused. So I'm always excited about a solution that causes a new use, solves a new problem, and delights the end user. And the best partnerships start from that. They don't start from dividing up the industry or restrictions on people or so forth. This is such a large space that there's room for lots of companies, lots of different approaches, and lots of different partnering styles. So I would suggest that the single most important thing is to agree on at least a definition of what does the end user want and go after it. The best partnerships, of course, are ones where everybody's making lots of money, because that keeps everybody's alignment. And again, I would say to all of you who are on the operator side, the explosion that you're seeing in data usage and all the revenue is a wonderful sign of great demand, right? And there are issues about how do you monetize it and finance it and so forth, and the rollout for LTE and so forth is very expensive. But I can assure you that you will get that money back in many, many ways. We, of course, benefit because we get the benefit of this enormous thing. So again, we have goal alignment. The third thing that we're doing and that other people are doing is that we're trying to share revenue with the applications developers. The applications ecosystem that we talked about in this performance is not fundamentally going to happen at scale without some way for those applications developers to make money. And they'll make it either through advertising, companies like AdMob, which Google's in the process of trying to purchase, or through subscriptions of one kind or another. And so it's going to be important that in the mobile industry there be opportunities for software and content people to make money both in advertising as well as in subscription and sale. And I think it's the sum of the attitude toward the end user and then, of course, a focus on jointly making lots of money, which will drive the profits, the investment in the industry. That's, by the way, how it worked in the PC industry. It's also how it worked in the mainframe industry. There's no reason to believe it's any different. Thanks, Reza. Some more questions.
John Strand, Strand Consult. When I look at some of the things which Google is saying, it's a little bit like you on the one side talk about all these fantastic things for the end users, and I agree, they're beautiful, the things you showed today, definitely, and great things to see. But when I see the way you are talking about these open networks, the operator's role, for me, it looks like Google wants to turn the operator into a dumb data pipe where you just provide with all the service on top. You see the operators as a data supplier, and you see you as the one who's providing with the service, and I can see your head is saying yes. Do you think there's money in, do you think there's money in being a dumb pipe?
Stop. I have no objection to your question, but that's not what I said.
But your
I was
head is
acknowledging
like this.
your question. Please continue with your question.
So if I look at it, you try to reduce the operator's role in the market, also regarding some of the things you've done on the lobby side regarding open networks and all those things. So for me, it looks like you want to turn the operators into a dumb pipe. Who's going to make the investments in infrastructure in the future if the operators don't have the possibilities of turning themselves into an intelligent pipe, and you want to reduce them to a dumb pipe?
So first place, thank you for your question. And I disagree with your premise completely. So I hope that's a clear answer. So let's go through this. In the first place, I feel very, very strongly that we depend on the successful businesses of the operators globally. And I disagree with you that, quote, we're trying to turn the operators into a dumb pipe. To the contrary, we need advanced, sophisticated networks that understand, for example, security, that can deal with dynamic signaling, can deal with dynamic load and mobility and load balancing, all of which is within the reach of successful and well-run operators. Since you made a series of specific points about our lobbying, why don't you explain your criticism, and I'll see if I can respond to it, because I suspect that it's a confusion in the audience and on your part on what our position actually is.
Could you please give the mic back?
Yeah, yes. Could somebody give him a mic?
The lobby things you're doing regarding, in the States, you was playing like a poker game regarding these open networks which have to be, and everyone, a lot of analysts in America was guessing you would invest in infrastructure, and then you pulled in last second, more or less, if you can say it that way.
You think that was a deliberate strategy on our part?
I don't know. I don't know.
No, but rather than, you're making an assertion. No, you're making an assertion. Ask it as a question, and I'll answer it so that we can establish the facts.
Are you willing to invest in infrastructure in the future? You will be one of those investing in infrastructure?
We are not going to be investing in broad-scale infrastructure. We're going to have the operators do it.
Okay.
We are, just so it's clear, this past week, we announced a test around a 1 gigabit per second network to precisely do that. Since apparently they've taken your microphone away, which is certainly not my request, the other thing that you implied had to do with open networks, and you were probably asking about network neutrality. And let me answer that question precisely, because Alexander and I had a good conversation. You want to ask the question, and I'll answer it for him?
Well, I mean, how do you define net neutrality?
Yeah, what happens is everybody sort of positioned us on the other side. We actually believe that it's important for operators to be able to deal with too much capacity and misuse of their networks, because we understand at a fundamental level that wireless networks have constraints on them. The only specific issue we have is we don't want operators to choose between different vendors of the same kind of content. The specific example, if folks over here have video and folks over here have video and I'm the operator, we, Google, want to make sure that the operator offers that video on the same basis from both sides. However, they can choose to discriminate within that category of service. So for example, if video uses too much bandwidth on the network, we don't object at all if the operators, in fact, do discriminate against one or the other. It's their business decision. So I hope that that's a clear answer. And indeed, since people are confused about this, you can go read the joint op-eds that we have been doing with Verizon, which precisely define this so you can understand it. Let's get our next question.
Hi, Eric. Pierre-Paul from Montreal, Quebec. Obviously, Google was a major agent of change. And I think the whole audience...
You used the word was.
Was.
Are we like kaput already?
No, was but is. I think I'm a little bit older, so I can go back in history also. One of the major paradigm that also has to change with mobile is obviously the payments, microfinance, getting the unbanked bankable and whatnot. What would be your strategy to bring the banking network, the banking community, to embrace this, right? Because it's a pretty closed network. So how do we revolutionize that through mobile technology and through some good strategic lobbying?
Well, first place, I think the work is being done by the mobile operators already and doing a pretty good job. As we all understand, the correct credit card is your mobile phone, right? Literally, if you think about it, it has so much information, it's so much more useful. For one thing, it's authenticated. It can be tied to your banking system. You have multiple choices of payment systems, et cetera, et cetera. So there are operators all around the world who have either trials or payment systems and so forth. For example, in Japan, they're heavily used. Less so in the United States, and in Europe, it depends on which country. The banking system is, of course, under lots of attack for other reasons and is highly regulated. What I would suggest is a strong lobbying campaign to make sure that alternate forms of payment can include the mobile phone operators. This strikes me, by the way, as a perfect example of a marriage of technology and the role that operators play, because operators already have a billing relationship. They're the most efficient billers by far, and so from the standpoint of selling applications, selling services, using it as a credit card, operators here in the room should be by far the best. We're happy to help.
Number 4, and then number 4.
Hi, Eric. I'm not going to make any assertions, just ask a fairly straightforward question.
That's okay, I like them.
Good. How do you feel about the expansion of active eyewear as hands-free, especially for drivers that are compelled to multitask whilst driving?
Well, first place, the evidence that I've seen says that drivers should not be looking at their mobile phones while they're driving. And I say evidence because a lot of people think that, in fact, you can multitask while you're driving. But the evidence says that accident rates and so forth really do change. And so some form of regulation, I suspect, is going to be necessary. And what else? I don't know how else to answer your question.
Number 2.
My name is Eko Nelson from IBM. What lessons do you think can the mobile web learn from the fixed web, particularly in the business model or the revenue model? I read that Ken Alerter of the New York Times says you've changed your view about the concept of free. I'm not sure whether that's true, but nonetheless, are there any lessons that we've learned from the fixed web that we should take account of in the mobile web?
I'm not sure about the Ken Alerter quote. You'll have to point it out to me later. I've learned a lot, and my views have changed over the years, so perfectly possible. A couple of comments. One of the lessons about the fixed web is the scale of things is very, very large if you get a platform that's right. So there's real benefit of establishing, for example, a standardized web browser so that everybody can program against that. So one of the things if you go back to the fixed web, the development of essentially what we think of as HTML5, JavaScript, and so forth and so on, all of those, I think, have analogs in the mobile world, or they have extensions in the mobile world. So I think that would be one comment. The second I've already said, which is that you're not fundamentally going to get the vision that I talked about without an ability for large number of people to make money, especially in the applications area. And so all of us are working hard on that. There are huge new innovations with respect to the ability to build powerful applications that are downloaded to your phone. Remember, only a few years ago, you had to have these enormously expensive applications that would be loaded into your PC. That's largely gone. One way to think about it is that it's always been the case that a large number of applications would run well on the web, but some required very specialized code on your PC. But with the power of browsers and the power of networks, that percentage is getting smaller and smaller. It is, for example, possible now to have sophisticated, graphics-intensive multiplayer games on your PC web browser. As you saw from the demos here, that will also be very soon possible on mobile phones as well. And that will consume lots of people's time. We should all be able to make a lot of money from it. So I think those are some examples of lessons that we've learned. I obviously have a strong belief in open systems and open platforms, which we've already discussed.
Number 6, please.
Hi, Eric. Ray Bariso, Telcordia. Just wanted to know if you'd share a few words on the strategy of the recent announcement on the fiber to the home trials.
Oh, we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a big interest. But how does that tie in, if at all, to like the focus on mobile? It just seemed to come out of left field.
Different groups. A blunt and pragmatic answer is that Google benefits from the adoption of broadband everywhere. We benefit, and I hope it's very clear to everybody in this room, we benefit from strong mobile broadband networks as well as strong fixed networks. In the area of fixed networks, which is what that announcement was about, we looked at it and we thought, isn't there a way, the current network architectures are tapped at about 100 megabits. They deliver up to that using DOCSIS 3 modems and so forth. And there are technical reasons why that appears to be a current ceiling. So we'd like to break through that ceiling in a demonstration project. As a result of that demonstration project, the RFP is out now. What we hope to do is to learn what kind of technologies are needed to provide literally a gigabit per second to your home or your office or what have you, to your desktop. God knows what you'll do with it, of course, because it's far more bandwidth than you consume in most of everything else you do, but people, I'm sure, will come up with ways. And then share that information with the industry, which I think is a good model for us. We're not, so it's very clear, I'll put it in a negative context, we're not getting into that business. It's a very tough business, and it's not a business for which we're very well optimized.
Good afternoon, Cameron Zacconi from the Belgian Walloon government. So through the many different applications Google and many others have developed in order to increase the user experience, we have seen a kind of shift in the broadband area, getting from an asymmetrical world towards a symmetrical world that you, of course, address with the fiber project. My question is the following. Do you see the same kind of shift which will be happening on the mobile world, which up to now was still an asymmetrical world?
Yes. So the way to state that is that historically there's been a difference in ratio in asymmetry between download and upload speeds of at least 10 to 1 in networks. And that's been true for many, many years for all the obvious reasons. You tend to consume more than you produce and so forth. I think the answer to whether that will continue in the mobile world is completely a function of two things. The first is the broad scale of ability for people to do personal video conferencing, which will generate lots of video, which is point to point. which is very difficult to cache, very difficult to do anything. It literally takes up all that bandwidth. And the second one is in massive multiplayer games, which are video intensive. So the massive multiplayer games are taking off. How video intensive they are will be determined by the market and by the consumer and by the platforms that they support. The video conferencing one, I've always believed that the next interesting application for your mobile phone is point-to-point video conferencing. It's obvious to me that the computer hardware is there, the bandwidth is getting there, the codecs are getting there, and so forth. So I think we'll see. So I think it would depend on the answer to those two questions.
Number 4.
Hi, my name is Maarten van Vliet, Telecom Update Netherlands. You'll be showing us these nice applications, and you'll be talking about the networks that have to support them. We also see that a majority of operators are migrating to LTE. What does this mean for your involvement in Clearwire or WiMAX in general? Are you going to raise the investments, or could you tell us something?
Well, good question. We invested in WiMAX for the same reasons we also support LTE. We benefit in the adoption of high-speed broadband. WiMAX, as you know, has a series of trials in a number of countries, including America, and also seems to be doing well. So I think we benefit we benefit regardless, and we're happy to see both succeed.
Kai Pusci, University of Augsburg, Germany. I would like to come back to the Google versus mobile operator question.
Why don't we phrase it as and rather than or? But please go ahead.
If you look 5 years ahead, will the customer feel at the first point as a Google customer, or will he feel as a Vodafone, T-Mobile, Orange customer?
My actual view of this is that the customer will be a customer of both in the following sense.
I guessed this answer.
Well, then you don't need my answer. And here's why. The relationship that the operator is going to have with the device is going to get much more sophisticated. The operator will have, as we mentioned, a billing relationship, a support relationship, an educational relationship, a platform relationship, if you will. Google will also know more about the customer because it benefits the customer to tell Google more about them. The more we know about the customer, the better the quality of searches, the better the quality of the apps. They're different, however. The operator one is required, if you will, and the Google one will be optional. And today, I would say a minority choose to do that, but I think over time a majority will, because of the stored value in the servers and so forth and so on.
So maybe now I can guess the answer that you didn't give. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3.
Hi, Eric. My name is Evgenia Mayorskaya, Yota WiMAX provider. And my question is, Google has really lots of exciting services. We couldn't see proper media services in action. So what's the future for Google Video and Google Music? And when could we see them in Europe? Thank you.
So you asked about Google Video and Google Music. Okay, so today we don't have a music product. And Google Video, of course, we have YouTube, which is available on most devices. My own opinion is that all of those categories, so books, magazines, music, video, will have readers on all sorts of devices, some which will be sold by Google, some which will be sold by others. And if you take the Kindle as an example, the Kindle will become hugely successful and also hugely copied, if you will, in the sense that the ideas of being able to have a subscription, be able to read, it's such a clever idea, and I congratulate Amazon for it, that you're going to see that on all of the devices. So from a Google perspective, we'll participate in the cloud, we may offer some subscription services and so forth, but we're not going to go into the content business, which is another way of saying that. We're going to stay as a platform.
Hi, Eric. Shaunak from Cambotech. Firstly, Google rocks. And secondly, I just had 2 questions. I had the opportunity to be with Alexander yesterday night. And we were just talking about mobile advertising. And one of the points we talked about was how advertisers and brands as such, they don't really budget for mobile advertising as a whole. Because it seems that they just don't get it, that, they get the TV model, but they don't get the mobile model. So how are you working on that? That's the first question. And the second question is, everybody talks about how successful Google is in all its areas. So is there an area that you think that maybe, you could do better, or that you need to do some more developments on that front?
Well, on the advertising side, this is why we have a sales force. That if you look at the scale of the advertising industry, it's, I don't know, about $1 trillion US industry. The online world is less than 1/10 of that, roughly speaking. So one way to think about it is that the amount of money that's going into traditional advertising, a lot of that money should shift to online. And within online, over a decade, a lot of that money should shift to mobile online. Why online? Because people are online all the time. That seems obvious, especially to this group, but it's factually true. Much of the revenue gains in our industry have come at the expense of offline, which is unfortunate for them, but it's because consumers are moving from offline to online. With respect to why mobile, well, mobile advertising should ultimately be better, because ultimately advertising is about specific targeting, literally how accurately can you target. Well, with a mobile device, we know a lot more about the person. For example, we know physically where they are, so we can suggest a much more local context. The belief at Google and many other people in the industry believe that the local opportunity is much larger and largely unexplored in online advertising compared to where it is today. So the way to answer your question is to say, all we're talking about is the growth rate, and if we can get the growth rate faster, which indeed is our job and the job of other players in the space, but I think it's going to happen. With respect to areas that Google is not doing as well as we should in, or areas of more investment, I always start from the premise that we want to have a little bit of Google in everybody's transaction with the internet. We want Google to add some value at the end user. And so there are large, large spaces that are interesting that literally would make the internet more ubiquitous and more available and more specific. All of those are areas that we're working on, and I'm never satisfied with how quickly we're delivering on them.
Just like smart grid.
Yeah, so an example would be the smart grid, which is just another extension of the internet into your home and into the electrical power systems. And those are massive, massive opportunities for Google and everybody else in the internet.
Number 6.
Hi, Eric. My name is Greg from Belgacom. So we see some mobile network crashing because of the mobile data explosion. And I heard this morning the CEO of RIM saying that for the load of one normal smartphone, you can have 3 BlackBerry RIM users. Do you also plan to try to optimize the use of network resources in your operating systems and device?
We will in the following sense. The network, we want to make sure that the network is adaptive. And so what happens, of course, is the network gets more congested. If we can get information about congestion, we can, in fact, adapt our use of the protocols. I don't want to paper over the fact that as people are consuming massive amounts of data because they're adopting more modern browsers, this is a shared problem. So I don't think that's going to be enough. And I think realistically, operators will be forced into various forms of tiered pricing and other ways to deal with the sort of top 1%, 5% of user. I think realistically, given the scarcity, that's all the operators will all be forced to do that in one way or the other.
5.
Hi, Eric. This is Sid from Web Spiders. By 2015, what percentage of non-advertising revenues do you see for Google in the 5 years' time?
You're talking about a Google specific?
Yeah, Google's revenue.
We have no idea. Yeah.
Okay.
At the vast majority of our revenue is advertising today.
But don't you think that puts a limit on how can you scale? I mean, you mentioned that you want to be a $100 billion first media company to cross 100 billion.
But then I'll want to be the $1 trillion. I mean, it's the correct behavior of a CEO to want more revenue.
No. What I mean to say is that. That's correct.
Is there any disagreement over this? Go ahead.
But do you see your model growing beyond advertising? Because it seems that there's one cash cow and everything is being funded through.
By the way, if you're going to pick a cash cow, pick ours. Right? we like ours. We like advertising. We're in the advertising business. We think advertising provides a tremendous amount of value. As I discussed earlier, there's a very large amount of advertising that's unexploited from the online world where we think we can add some value. I do believe that Google will eventually have significant sources of revenue from enterprise software sale, enterprise of one kind or another software, as well as subscriptions around applications. That's an important new area for us.
Thanks.
Number 4.
Neeraj Chandra from Tiger Global. Eric, I had a question. This week, I have been amazed at the sheer number of mobile computing platforms that we've seen. iPhone, BlackBerry OS, Samsung has one, Migo, et cetera, and of course Android. So I'm curious, how do you see this current environment evolving 5 to 10 years from now? Will we still have 2 or 3 or 4 predominant operating systems, or would you expect this all to migrate around 1 or 2? And then as a corollary to that question, I think one of the drivers of migration to an OS platform is just what you can do with the phone and the applications associated with it. And Google clearly has a lot of fantastic applications, as you've demonstrated today, currently, which you generally make available to all platforms. So will Google always make all of the applications it develops available to all platforms, or at some point will you keep this only for Android in an effort to drive migration?
It's our stated goal to make everything available for all platforms, not to particularly favor Android. So I hope that's a clear answer. The most likely scenario for any of these things is the number of platforms goes very large. There's a lot of competition, which is where we are now, and then it winnows down for a smaller number. I don't know how many months, years, and so forth it will take, but there's certainly the competition that's going on right now, of which we're one of many players, I think is hugely beneficial to the end user.
Number 3.
Hello, Sergey Gusев from Russia. Moto mobile first means that fixed line service will be dying in nearest future, maybe. But you are continue to build new fiber optical network for 1 gigabit internet access. What for? If wireless technology developing and deploying and improving so quickly?
We don't think there's going to be one solution for data access. For an example, Wi-Fi will also continue to get better, 802.11n and so forth and so on, in the same way that LTE becomes this amazing standard in the mobility space. From my perspective, having an all light, literally an all fiber network, is ultimately always going to have more bandwidth, because the bandwidth within the fiber is essentially unconstrained. Because as you know, the way the signaling works is within a fiber, you have all the frequencies that you can play with respect to speed. So there will always be the difference, and there will always be a market for people who want the absolute fastest network, and they're going to be willing to pay for it. I think it's a good business opportunity for some operators.
We'll take a couple of more questions. Number 2.
Eric, Patrick Meyer from SourceBits. Inspiring presentation, and the fact that you're taking questions is admirable, so thank you. My question relates to apps. We've done about 150 apps. We're Apple Hero Developer. We've also a Hero Developer for a number of other companies. The apps right now that are coming out, Android, yesterday there was a presentation, there were 51 app stores that range from just a couple hundred to maybe 5,000, and then obviously 150,000 for Apple. From a Google standpoint, what do you see evolving? What's going to be the app store or app marketplace over the next several years?
Again, I think the fact that there's so many choices benefits the end user and the operator, and we've made a decision not to force everybody into a single model. From your perspective as a developer, it should ultimately mean more markets, more choices, more customers. That's why we chose it that way.
Number 1, and then there will be one more question.
Erwin Bogert, E-Commerce Magazine from the Netherlands. I've got a question. Why do the operators here in the room not have to fear Google moving services like Google Talk, Voice, and Gizmo to the mobile environment? Thank you.
Well, I think Google Voice already runs in the mobile environment because it runs on the mobile phones. I guess I'm not sure. I never understand these questions of fear, so maybe you could ask your question a little differently. I prefer to sort of focus on users and build stuff.
I was referring to Google stealing talk minutes of mobile operators.
Google stealing talk minutes from the mobile operators.
Yeah, is that clear enough? Otherwise, I can't formulate it differently.
So it's not our objective to steal your minutes. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is people on these phones are going to use sophisticated applications which will use voice. And the other fact, of course, is that these phones are so powerful that voice is really an afterthought. Another way to say this is that if I would ask your question a different way, I would say, isn't SMS stealing all those talk minutes? Because people are SMSing rather than talking. And ultimately, it's the end user behavior that's driving that behavior. I think all of us, that's what I was trying to say earlier, we should embrace that and figure out a way to make money together in it rather than try to block it.
Okay. Number 5, and then we'll take last question.
Hi, I'm Julien Delario from Frandroid.com, French community blog. How do you meet with the customers and freelance developers? Because they haven't an industrial position to speak about their feelings.
I'm sorry, I did not understand. Yes. Did you want me to meet with them?
Yeah, you and in the Android project, how do you meet them and discuss with customers and developer freelance because they don't have a big partner?
Okay, let me just say, we do have meetings with them, and we also have a very large conference coming up in May where everybody is invited. Were you looking for a different answer than that?
No.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Last question, number 6, please.
Toby Shapshak, the Times newspaper from South Africa. There's no doubt that Google's amazing and that you've brought out a lot of spectacular game changers. You know, Gmail for the purpose of this question being one of them. It's a two-part question about privacy, and there's an increasing concern about it in our cloud computing world. People use the inbox as a way to store all of their passwords, all of their important information. We know that the average computer user, let's say, isn't that bright, and they use the name of their kid or the name of their pet as their password. And cyber criminals becoming pretty sophisticated at getting into someone's Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo account for that matter and getting that kind of information and, let's just say, stealing their identities. The first question is, what is Google doing to protect those computer users' data? I know it's not incumbent on you, but is there something that you're doing to do that? And the second part is specifically about what Google's doing in terms of privacy. A lot of people say that you're doing very questionable things that go against your don't be evil mantra, going into China, banning news organizations who use Google search tools to find out information about the co-founders. History shows us that powerful, big companies tend to become arrogant and more powerful and more didactic. What will Google do to remain honorable?
A two-part question on the Gmail question. The simplest answer is to have stronger password authentication, and indeed now the entire industry, including Google, will bring out things where they say, well, your password's not strong enough. So I completely agree with that. People just don't realize that their information is at risk. Google took the unusual step of announcing that we had been attacked. On January 12th, we announced this. The attack occurred late last year. And as a result, created a huge firestorm where we, among other things, said that we were unwilling to continue to participate in the censorship that's required by law in China. So I would argue that Google has taken a very strong both position with respect to privacy as well as security and so forth. Security is a race between the lock picker and the lock maker. And there are many, many technologies that are in development in Google, and I suspect at other companies as well, that will make our networks more secure. This is a crucial issue because if you follow the line of reasoning of what I said, mobile first, everything in the cloud, it means more and more of your personal information will be completely on the network and on the cloud. So with respect to privacy and those sorts of things, I think you'll find that Google is particularly sensitive to these issues. We've taken a strong public position. We're not perfect, we occasionally make mistakes, but we're trying very, very hard. Ultimately, privacy will be legislated because it'll become so important and it'll be legislated on a per country basis. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you very much, Alexander.
Thank you, Thank you very much. You're very frank and good answers. Thank you, everybody.